A lot of people these days are talking about buying the dip. What about the idea of buying the pop? Might sound a little counterintuitive. We're going to look today at a Canadian company that is bucking the trend. And despite virtually every major index being down, this company is showing strong year-to-date growth. More importantly, I project that it has a good runway in front of it and will continue to provide some growth. Today, there is a heartbreaking shortage of food around the globe. I mean, if you can get food, the prices are really skyrocketing, but in many parts of the world, you can't even get food. And that problem is just becoming worse and worse as we go along. World Bank calls this a human catastrophe, and it certainly is. Now, as an investor, sometimes you have to look for opportunities that come out of these crises. It doesn't mean that your heart doesn't break for the people who are suffering from these, but what we're going to do in this video today is we're going to look at a Canadian company that is positioned well to capitalize, I guess you would say, on the strong demand for nutrients that go into growing our food. And the company that I'm talking about is Nutrien. It has about a $70 billion market cap, and it trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange at a price of about $125. Nutrien is the world's largest producer of potash and is also a leader in the production of nitrogen and phosphate. It works with farmers around the world to provide the nutrients that they need to grow their crops. And in times like this, where we're seeing this tremendous pressure on not only the price of food, but also just on the production itself, and we're going to talk about that more in just a moment here, you can really see how a company like this might benefit. Nutrien has over 2,000 retail locations across the US, Canada, Australia, and South America. From a market share perspective, Nutrien is the unparalleled, undisputed leader in this field. If you look at this pie chart, you'll see in the US ag retail industry, 22% of the market share goes to Nutrien. And when you look at even the nearest competitors, co-ops, independents are their biggest competitors. And if you look at the other branded companies, they pale in comparison from a market share perspective to Nutrien. The company has grown its market share by about 1% per year on a very steady incline, going back to 2015 right through to a target of having a 24% market share by the end of next year. Now, as I said, a lot of companies, a lot of really good companies have lost a lot of value year to date. When we look at the year-to-date performance of Nutrien, though, the company is up about 35%. The company is up about 150 cents since the start of the pandemic. And since the company came into existence, and we're going to talk more about that in just a few moments here, about 115% increase there. So the question, of course, becomes, have we in fact missed our opportunity to buy this pop, as I'm calling it? Quick history on the origins of Nutrien. It's only a company that's been around or publicly traded since 2018. Now, prior to that, there were a couple of companies, Potash Corporation of Saskatchewan, which was founded in 1975, and Agrium, which was founded in 1931. When this deal was announced back in 2017, I guess, it was sort of touted as a merger of equals, and Agrium brought a really strong retail presence to the equation. Potash was the world's largest producer of fertilizer, so they were kind of like a marriage made in heaven. Now, when you think of the prospects of a company like this and in the times we're in right now with the Ukraine conflict, the Russian-Ukraine conflict going on, one of the first things we think of are the sanctions that have been placed on Russia. Now, even before this conflict broke out, so going back to about December of 2021, the U.S. imposed sanctions on one of the other top producing potash companies of the world, which is Belarus. Now that Russia has also been sanctioned, there's a huge drop in the global potash supply chain. And in fact, about 40% of the world's global production comes from these two countries, Russia and Belarus. So clearly that has put a real wrinkle and a demand on those who are still able to produce. When we look at the Russian potash supply, the solid green bar shows the exports from Russia, and we can see that for 2022, the projections are a steep decline, and this obviously comes about from the war conflict, the sanctions that have been placed on there. Similar picture for Belarus, where we see strong exports in 2021, and then the sharp expected decline for 2022. Now, obviously, having two of the major global players having their exports sanctioned and reduced by so much, that is going to lead to a massive shortage in fertilizer, which then will trickle down and lead to an equivalent decrease in the supply or in the production of food itself and the food chain and the food supply. When we here on the channel are putting our research together to do videos like this or for our own investment purposes, one of the go-to platforms that we use is Inverse. Inverse is a free platform, and what's very unique about it, it is a platform that was built by DIY investors and it built for specifically DIY investors. If you're looking for a quick glance at what's happening in the markets at the moment, Along the top, you get a quick overview of the major indices, how the sectors are performing. The real strength of this program is when you can then go through and look at the articles, the research that's done by other contributors on the platform. When you want to take a deeper dive into a company like Nutrien, for example, search it up and it will immediately take you to an overview of the company, the description of what the company does, and the major sort of at-a-glance information that you're going to want to be familiar with. Want to keep up with the major events such as dividends, announcements, earnings, etc.? You can see that in advance. Flip on over to the financials page and you'll have access to all of the important information that you need to complete your due diligence properly. Income statement, balance sheet information, cash flow statement. One of my favorite sections is the metrics section, where you can see all of the important information simply at a glance. A huge part of effective note-taking is to be able to not do things over and over. And with their note-taking facility here on the Inverse platform, you're looking at a chart, you're looking at a table, you can simply take a snapshot of it. And then when you go to your notes, it's all saved for you in one convenient location. Simply record your thoughts, your research, your screenshots, all of the vital information that you need to make good investment decisions. It's all there waiting for you next time you come back to the platform. Inverse is free. I would invite you to check it out, and I will put a link for it in the description below. Now back to our video. So when we look at the short-term prospects of a company like Nutrien and how this global disruption might play into that, even if we look at something as simple as the prices of the various crops, we can see that for corn, for soybean, for wheat, for cotton, the tight supply is going to naturally lead to higher prices, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And for those companies who are left with the capacity to actually supply the world for these nutrients, that's exactly what we're going to see. We're going to see an increase in their production. Nutrien is increasing its potash production capability, as you might expect, and also with the accompanying potash sales volumes increasing. And then if we look at the bottom part of this chart here, the potash adjusted EBITDA spikes in 2022. Nutrien did just report a couple of weeks ago, and with their most recent numbers, we see a really substantial increase in their adjusted EBITDA up to $15.5 billion. That is somewhat to be expected given all that's going on out there in the world right now. From an economics point of view, when we look at the increasing price of fertilizers, this chart kind of tells a lot of different stories here. The orange line on the left shows historical potash costs, and on the right, phosphate costs. On both charts, the dotted gray line is the average of these costs. The upper dotted line is the yield gain from each of these commodities. So even though the cost of the commodity itself is up, the gain on yield that the farmers will be able to produce outweighs and is still significantly below the historical averages. When you look at the global fertilizer prices for potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus, across the board, all prices have risen, and this has obviously been supported by very strong demand and the supply chain disruptions that we've seen. We're kind of getting back now to the major impetus right now for, I think, why the company has done well recently and why I think it'll continue to do well. We're looking at these reductions, particularly in the supply chain. So this next chart says a lot when it compares the production of Nutrien on the far left, the rest of Canada, and then the next two bars, the next two sections are Russia and Belarus. And again, by that sort of the mixed blue-gray line, we can see that the expected production in those areas is going to decline significantly. Clearly, that's going to be a boost for a company like Nutrien. That's one of the reasons I'm liking it right now. When we look at any investment, personally, I like to at least consider whether they pay a dividend. And yes, in fact, Nutrien does. When we look at their dividend history here, they've recently raised their dividend as of February of this year to 48 cents a quarter. That was a 4% increase from the previous dividend. And their payout ratio is a very, very healthy 21.5%. When it comes to yield on your investment, in addition to the dividends they're paying themselves, they are also planning to repurchase additional shares through 2022. They've announced that with their most recent report. And a company like Nutrien, the fact that even at this 35% price year to date, roughly, they're going in, they're still continuing to buy their own shares, which if they're being managed appropriately or responsibly, that would indicate that they still see significant upside potential on the actual share prices, even at today's share prices. From a valuation perspective, a current PE ratio of 12.9. There is no 5-year number. I like to always look back and see how a company is doing relative to their 5-year history. Because the company started trading in 2018, there isn't that 5-year history yet. But when we compare them, the 12.9 to the sector average is about 13 right now. So they're basically trading in line with their peers. If you're looking for an opportunity to put some money into the markets in a company that has actually gone up and not down year to date, then Nutrien is a company you might want to put on your radar. If you are, in fact, though, looking to buy the dip, I did a video just the other day of the considerations that you should probably be looking for. I'll put a link up to that video here. I will remind you the first link below is for our Investing Academy. I would invite you to check that out. I thank you for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.